Some years ago, a Catholic priest I knew asked me about Armenians. Where did they come from? Who were they? And indeed, where was Armenia? I was very surprised. We talked about Noah's Ark and the Garden of Eden, as mentioned in the Bible, and I explained that this was where Armenia was, a part of Eastern Anatolia. But I'm unsure why he looked uninterested in what I was talking about. When considering some colorful aspects of the world's history, studies show that Armenians originally arrived at the Armenian Plateau during the 800 BC. However, one asks, where did they really originate from? Were they the offspring of Sumerians? For their stories and folklore have similarities with Sumerians of old. Studies show it to be the reality, and this is also why a brief observation of their history becomes an excellent idea, for they played a major role in humanity's past. Here is an encyclopedic story of Armenians, where we discover that Russian and Greek empires have ruled the country for periods of time. They gained complete independence in 189 BC. The great ruler Dikran II came to power during 95 BC and built the Armenian Empire, which extended from the Mediterranean to the Caspian Sea. The Romans defeated him in 55 BC and are said to have ruled Armenia at various periods until the 1400s AD. During this time, a number of nations, including Arabs, Turks, Mongols, and Persians, battled with the Romans to gain control of Armenia. In fact, Armenia was the very first nation to accept Christianity during the 300s AD. They defended their religious identity in the Battle of Awarre in 451 against the Persians. The Armenian alphabet was invented during the 400s, and they translated the Bible, establishing their first university. During the Byzantine rule of the Roman Empire, Armenians held significant and very powerful positions in the military, even within the whole of European continent. During 1920, the Treaty of Sivas was signed by Turkey and the Allies. This way, an independent Armenia included most of the historical land. However, Russia, together with Turkey, invaded Armenia later that same year. The Russians took over Eastern Armenia in November 1920 and made it a Soviet republic. Russian Armenia joined the republics of Georgia and Azerbaijan in the Transcaucasian Federation in 1922. These three republics were separated later in 1956. During that year, Armenia became the Armenian Soviet Socialist Republic. The Soviet government assisted them with their industrialization. More than 200,000 Armenians are believed to have returned from other countries since then. Many Armenians have gained power and fame not only in Russia, but all around the world. To name a few, think about the great composer Aram Khachaturian and Anastas Mikoyan, became president of Russia in 1964 and 1965. Previously, he had served as the very first vice president of the country. He was also the Commissioner of Food Supply and Minister of Trade. He visited the United States in 1936 for the first time and became supply chief of the Russian army during World War II. He was born in Russian Armenia and was the son of a carpenter. He studied theology, but became a communist in 1915 and took part in the Russian Civil War of 1918 to 1920. He was also a member of the party's General Committee from 1922 to 1976, as well as a member of its Politburo from 1926 to 1966. Russian-designed jet fighter planes were named as MiG. The most advanced type was MiG-21J and was able to fly at supersonic speeds at sea level. Its designers were the Russian-Armenian Artem Mikoyan and Mikhail Gurevich in the 1900s. Do you remember the magical voice of Charles Aznavour? In reality, his family name would end with Jan or Ian, Jan. Think about Karajan, the name of the famous conductor, for I have often been questioned about the meaning of his name. Actually, almost all Armenian names end with Jan, Jan, or Ian. The word alone stands for the son of, which is similar to some European names like Stevenson or Johnson. It still surprises me how some scholarly people can be unbelievably ignorant about the facts of history. Then again, it should not be a real concern in the face of falsified documents of old and denials of the actual reality of past events due to the religious control systems of nations. One wonders about how much of man's history has been faithfully recorded, let alone correctly presented on an as-is basis. In my case, like my brother, I too was ardently encouraged never to question our past, or even search for information. Interestingly, when in Turkey we were expected to learn about the past in a biased way at school, emphasizing the Ottomans' history and their great achievements when they invaded other countries. We were also encouraged to think of those invasions as the only truthful records of history. This is when the invading armies apparently introduced good hygiene and healthy practices, making, for example, entire European nations painted as completely uncivilized. In Europe, however, the schooling we were subjected to taught us a different kind of history, showing us who the real uncivilized barbarians were, who were right and what indeed was the correct presentation of history. Why could we not learn all about the true reality of things? At this point, I feel the need to share with you some historic viewpoints as research and study indicates, using available data from archival literature when referring to facts and my own theories in regard to my parental background. We have been told that the past was unimportant, yet we were subjected to history lessons at school. Was this due to having every detail of minority groups not adhering to the religious principles of their nation, not deserving to live as human beings, and their citizens being wiped off as if they never existed, unless they changed their identity, names, and religious beliefs? Although Armenians contributed much to their culture as a minority group, they were targeted, segregated, and literally destroyed as rebels, allegedly presenting a great danger to their government's stability. Similar attitudes can be observed all around the world, under the fanatical dictums of uneducated religious leaders. We were not surprised to find that there was non-existent documentation proving that we ever existed. We were also not surprised to find only fragmented and doctored documents showing that we ever had a background. My parents did not enlighten us, even when our relations scattered around the world, and that could not have been due to my brother and me being incapable of comprehending the intricacies of life, although some people of no significance conveniently prefer to think of us as lacking in intelligence. But let me take you to a different page in history, for I believe it is relevant to my parents' background. I will try to make it as colorful as possible. The earliest inhabitants of the landmass now known as Turkey were the Hittites. Many were said to have migrated from Central Asia and parts of Europe into central Anatolia in approximately 2000 BC. During the following few centuries, they conquered most of Anatolia, Mesopotamia, and Syria, and during 1500s BC they created a great empire. However, large parts of Anatolia fell to the Lydians, Phrygians, and a few others from circa 1200 to 500 BC. During this period, the Greeks established several cities along Anatolia's Aegean coast. The Persians seized control of Anatolia and Thrace during 500 BC, but Macedonian Alexander the Great crushed the Persian army in 331 BC. As you can imagine, after Alexander's death in 323 BC, Anatolia became a battleground among his successors. Small rulerships ruled to power and fell until 63 BC, the time when the Roman general Pompey conquered the region. Anatolia was finally at peace under Roman rule for about 400 years. The Roman Emperor Constantine the Great relocated his capital from Rome to the ancient city of Byzantium in Thrace and renamed it Constantinople, the city of Constantine. During 395, the empire was divided into East and West Roman empires. Barbarians conquered the West Roman Empire in the mid-400s. The East Roman Empire was known as the Byzantine Empire, and Byzantine emperors ruled the region until the late 1000s. The Muslim Seljuks from south-central Russia and northern Mongolia invaded the country and were known to be one of the first Turkish peoples therein. They conquered Armenia and Iran. In 1071, they destroyed the Byzantine rule in Anatolia when they defeated the Byzantine army in Manzikert. They then set up an empire with Iconium as their capital. This city is now known as Konya. From then on, the Christian religion and Greek language were gradually replaced by Islam, and a form of Turkish language was introduced. The history enacted around this part of the world has been rich with controversy, battlements, and much bloodshed, as well as being a part of biblical stories. Thankfully, more down-to-earth information in regard to the facts thereof is still available in ancient records. Through research into the evidence proving the reality of things is like time travel into bygone days, and is a worthy consideration when examining the ever-present differences between Turks and Armenians without bias. However, let us consider a few more historic facts, remembering that in 1095 Christians in Western Europe started a campaign setting up military expeditions they called crusades to drive the invaders from the Holy Land. The first crusade was during 1096 to 1099. They defeated the Seljuk Turks severely in western Anatolia, but subsequently left the peninsula to fight in the Holy Land. The Seljuk Empire lasted until 1243, when it was invaded by the Asian Mongols. However, the Mongol Empire experienced extreme internal struggles and finally fell apart, thus helping the Turks to expand into Anatolia. During the 1300s, a group of them, calling themselves the Ottomans, started to build a different empire. In 1326, they seized the city of Bursa and made it their capital. Whilst all this was happening, they conquered two-thirds of western Anatolia and most of Thrace, as well as large parts of Balkan Peninsula and Greece. The only small part of the Byzantine Empire which remained was in the area around Constantinople. In 1453, Muhammad II captured Constantinople and ended the Byzantine rule.